Well, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really looking forward to taking a deeper look into data management and best practices tailored specifically for nonprofit organizations. So I'm Sarah, and I'll be your host today. I manage our nonprofit competency at Mirketa. And in today's data-driven world, nonprofits face unique challenges in effectively managing and leveraging their data to drive impact and achieve their mission. Whether you're dealing with donor information, volunteer data, program outcomes, or operational metrics, having a robust data management strategy really is crucial for success. So in this webinar, we'll share practical insights and strategies to help your nonprofit organization optimize its data management practices. We'll explore the key components of a successful data management framework, including data collection, storage, quality assurance, and analysis. Our goal for this webinar is to provide you with valuable tips and techniques to streamline your data processes, improve data accuracy, and unlock the hidden potential within your organization's data. So for our agenda today, we will discuss understanding the importance of data management, building a tailored data management strategy, data collection, storage, and organization best practices, ensuring data integrity through quality assurance, leveraging data analytics to make informed decisions, practical data management tools and tech, overcoming common challenges and pitfalls, and real-world examples and success stories. Before we dive into the content, I would like to take a moment to introduce our resident expert on the topic, Rajiv Kumar. Rajiv is the founder and CEO of Mirketa. He brings with him a wealth of expertise garnered from over 25 years of industry experience in business consulting and leadership positions. Rajiv has collaborated with numerous prominent organizations, guiding them in crafting effective organizational process and implementing cutting-edge systems to truly optimize their data management. And for a very brief introduction on Mirketa, Mirketa is a Dublin, California-based digital transformation consulting company specializing in Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Oracle ERP ecosystems. Mirketa has a wealth of experience, accumulating over 2 million hours of project experience in sales, service, and marketing automation, using Salesforce Cloud and other leading SaaS solutions. Mirketa has managed offerings accounting for more than 60% of revenue, where captive teams are created for our clients to effectively manage their CRM, ERP, and marketing automation solutions. A little bit about Mirketa, and now without further ado, I would love to dive in. So thank you again so much for joining us this morning. I truly hope you find this webinar valuable, insightful, and inspiring. And I will now turn it over to Rajiv.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm super excited to be with you guys today. Hopefully, next 40 minutes or so, I would be able to share the knowledge experience that I've gained working with larger organizations, including nonprofit. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about nonprofit, the data management challenges, strategies, options that they have. And Sarah, if you don't mind, I could maybe take over the presentation, and then
That sounds
way
great. I
you can
just
control it.
turned over the sharing to you.
Great. So the way we have structured the webinar is, topics that would go in logic. The first question that comes to our mind is, why is it important? And the answer is pretty obvious. We all come from the industry. We know data is important. I wanted to put a lens from nonprofit organization perspective. While the bullet points that we have here are relevant for every organization, I'm just going to put the color commentary again, putting it from the nonprofit point of view. So when you're looking at the why data is important, number one, with data, you make informed decisions. Effective data management ensures that nonprofit have accurate, reliable, and up-to-date information to make informed decisions. Data-driven insights can guide strategic planning, program design, resource allocation, overall organization management. Proper data management enables nonprofit to identify trends, measure impact, and make evidence-based decisions. That basically is the goal, to maximize the mission fulfillment. So when an organization gets to the maturity level that most organizations want to get to. You want to make sure everything that we do is aligned with the mission, and data helps you making the decision with, what leverage that you have, what data is telling you. So you basically use data to make every decision in the organization. The number two, when it comes to nonprofit, is program outcomes. Now, nonprofit collect tons of data. Now, and you have a lot of different programs that you're running. With proper data management, organization can track and analyze program outcomes, assess their effectiveness, and identify area for improvement. By understanding the impact of their work, nonprofit can make data-driven adjustment to their program. So if things are not working the way you want, uh, or you hope that they're going to work, you keep tweaking. And having data, the holistic view of the data, timely access to the data helps you make those decisions. When it comes to engagement and fundraising, again, you're going to be reaching out to a lot of your donors. Donors and funders increasingly expect nonprofit to report to them um, on the outcomes for the program that they're supporting. They want transparency. They want measurable outcome. Proper data management allows nonprofits to provide accurate and timely reports to their activities to their donors. Uh, Essentially, reliable data can help build trust with donors, leading to stronger relationships, increased funding opportunities, and long-term sustainabilities. Uh, Enhanced resource allocation. Again, once you have data available to you, you know where where your investment should be. You know where your investment is lacking. So once you have established the relationship between an outcome and the input that you have, you can have data help you make those decisions. You can use data to do stakeholders engagement. Now, we talked about donors and funders. You have other stakeholders who need to be informed, other stakeholders that you're trying to bring to your cause. You want to run an outreach campaign, you want to do marketing campaign for them. Now, all of that is possible if you have the right data at the right place, available at the right time. You need data management policies for compliance and accountability. You have stewardship of funds that is given by your donors and funders. You want to make sure the way the funds are allocated is transparent. You want to make sure you falling in the compliance that the government has put together or the guidance that your organization has put together. You need data for collaborations and partnerships. So once you start working with the your partners, other organizations, government agencies, academic institutions, they expect data from you. If you're working with an academic institution about a program that's funded by them, they would expect that you're essentially sharing the data with them. Now, the data is not only available to you, but it's available in the form that they want to consume the data that's useful for them. And then the last thing I would say, and with data, you learn. You build historical perspective for your organization. Data enables you make better decisions every time. You learn from your experience, experiments. You use data to decide what's the next big thing, next right thing to do. So essentially, it's an essential item for us for the long-term organizational learning as well. Now, we all know why it is important. Why is it not done? And what challenges that we have, especially for nonprofit. And again, some of these challenges you guys come from probably different verticals as well. Like Mirketa, we work with nonprofit, we work with other clients, and challenges could be common. Uh, uh, and some of them are very specific to nonprofit. Data fragmentation. Now, data fragmentation in a nonprofit, you have so many different sources that you collect data from. You have volunteers, you have staff members that are using their system. Sometimes you're using Excel, sometimes you're using some surveys, and the data comes, and not only it comes in different sources collected by different set of people, but it resides into different scattered systems. Now, that's a pretty unique challenge, especially given the size of these organizations as compared to larger organizations that we work with. Even a small nonprofit will have multiple sources, scattered system that have data that you collect. So that's essentially the number one problem. Number two problem would be data quality integrity. Now, the driver for that is largely manual processes for data management. You have inconsistent way of collecting data. You have inconsistent way of putting data into your system. Integrity and quality, generally speaking, will exist again in other organizations as well. When it comes to nonprofit, the amount of data entry that happens that we have seen in our experience, manual entry across the board, it's largely the contributor for leading to bad quality of data, the integrity of data that you have in your system. You have limited data analyst capabilities. Typically, when an organization grows, you have specific roles around data. You have specific roles around system development. You have data analyst roles uh, who are trained in terms of data analysis, data manipulation, data cleansing. Those either the capabilities don't exist, skill don't exist, or just the capacity doesn't exist in nonprofit. You have data privacy and security issues. Now, the theme is common, but the underlying driver would be although we are dealing with very sensitive donor data, we don't really have the necessary skills, knowledge, and resources, and even access to the tools that are designed, the cutting edge tools that are designed for data privacy and security. We don't have people who come with that background that know uh, how to protect sensitive donor data. And again, this is not true for every organization, but thematically, this is true because you don't have the funds, you don't have the resources, funds to allocate the resources and find higher resources that come with that kind of experience for you. Um, you have data integration issues. So we start with the scattered data. What makes it worse is that scattered data remains scattered. So you really don't have one place where you can find connected data. You don't have connection between systems. So when you're pulling information out of systems, it is very siloed. It is incomplete. And that essentially leads into all kind of issues. You have data governance issues. And again, uh, the issue overall is data governance. The underlying cause, again, is going to be just the lack of policies and procedures. And that starts with where do you start? What is the right way of putting data governance? What is data governance? Now, that the knowledge and the experience around that is the driver for this challenge. And lastly, general awareness for data. Now, general awareness for data, by that I mean data literacy. Uh, Nonprofit staff members may lack sufficient data literacy skills needed to effectively work with data. Uh, you know, how do I manipulate data? Should I capture this data? Should we hide this data through permissions for other people who don't need it? Now, those kind of things come from general literacy, which if you're working for a large bank, for example, or a large hospitals, folks are specifically trained, how to manage data. And that may not be the case a lot of times with the nonprofit organizations. So that's essentially uh, the challenges and the underlying causes, what causes those challenges. Now, we talked about why it's important and what causes that. The next thing would be how do you build robust data management strategy that fits your needs? The steps required would remain pretty consistent if you're working with any organizations. And we're going to talk about those steps. Number one is you got to define your data goals. Now, start by defining your organization data goals. Identify the specific data you need to collect, analyze, and manage to support the mission, program, and stakeholders. Determine the key performance indicators and metrics that align with the organization goals. Now, when you look for any project, any new development, any new initiative that you're going to fund, along with your requirements about the programs and the system, the topmost thing should be what data are we going to collect, what outcome we want to measure, which kind of drives what data you're going to collect, how you're going to manage it. So have that clarity put in place first. Now that's the number one step. Second step is going to be, now I know what my data goals are. Now it's the matter of designing my solution. Now, solution could be that I'm designing system solution, which is pretty broad. And if I look at it from the lens of a data architect, I'm working in parallel with my team. I'm planning and designing the data structure. Now, data structure is going to be based on the data goals. The structure includes the minimum set of data requirements that I have. I should not take anything more than what we need to support my goals. As I'm defining the data structure, I'm also thinking about at the time where I'm going to store it. Is it going to be stored locally? Is it going to be pushed centrally? Is it going to be a transactional data? I'm going to have a reporting database somewhere else. Now, all of those things need to be thought through upfront as you're thinking about a project as a concept. Once a concept gets funded, oftentimes the development cycle takes all the time that you've allocated, and in many cases takes all the budget that you've allocated. So unless you start thinking data as its own project that's run along with your software development project, it's very hard to get time and funds for that. Uh, so once you have defined the structure, the storage, systems are built. Now you got a system that's functioning. People are going to start using the system, and you got to standardize how we're going to use the system, how we're going to collect data. Now, data collection, if I'm going to have certain type of data collected, if I'm using certain nomenclature for data, I'm using certain fields to store certain information, it has to be consistent across the organization. Now, this becomes a training issue as part of your rollout of a new system. It could be training issue as part of rolling out a new process or program that you have, but you got to worry about right from the beginning what my data collection approach is going to look like. You can't have a good data if your data collection itself is corrupted upfront. Uh, the cost of fixing data once it comes to your system is a lot more than cost of training individuals, enforcing proper data collection techniques right upfront. Uh, Next step that we want to think about is the governance piece. Now, governance is a pretty loaded term. When we look at the data governance includes uh, what my roles and responsibilities, who are the people who's going to deal with data, what is their role, what are their responsibilities, whether in terms of data collection, data management, reporting, uh, and so forth. So you gotta see data as a commodity or as an asset, and you have to define to manage this asset, what are the different roles and what are they going to do with this data, and defining the process for doing that. Now, collectively, once you define roles, responsibilities, and process, is what we term as governance. Now, you gotta assign data ownership to individuals or teams responsible for data collection. So I know that I'm going to be collecting data. Here's my team, or here's an individual who owns it. So if I need to check certain program data, or if I have to make any updates or reports out of a program data, we know who's the right person. Now, typically in an organization, if you look at, you have a chief data architect who would own data across the organization. They may have their indirect reportees that come to them who own certain pieces of databases in different applications. But eventually, every application, every piece of data has an owner. We have a process on how the data is going to be inserted, managed, archived, deleted, and you got to have, uh, once you start collecting data, your governance process defines how you're going to maintain it. You have to worry about uh, how I'm going to keep my data clean. And it's very common for all organizations. After you put a system in place for about a year or two, you're going to start having records that are incomplete, records that are duplicate. So you got to have more than just eyeballing the data, because that doesn't work when you have thousands and thousands record sets available to you. You have to have tools that are designed for keeping data integrity. You have tools that are designed for cleansing data, merging duplicates, flagging duplicates. So leverage those and define those upfront, how I'm going to manage those data. So it's not something that you uh, want to worry about once the system is in place and you have 100,000 record, and now you want to worry about how to actually get rid of 20% of my data that's corrupted. The cost of that, although it's doable, is quite a bit. Um, Data cleanup exercise, data merge exercise is one of the most sensitive projects that we deal with, because the cost of doing it wrong is quite a bit. Not in terms of the direct project cost, but the impact of merging the wrong records. Somebody's phone number goes into somebody else's records. A relevant record gets deleted. So we want to make sure that we're not, um, we're not making it as an afterthought for us. We have to have uh, certain intelligent tool that sits and they provide uh, the trending that you see in data. Now we got tons of AI-based tools now that are available, including Einstein on Salesforce, that can start showing you the trending, that you can start identifying, what my data looks like. And if you started your data design based on the goals, you can start seeing the trends and seeing whether the trend, and as you collect more data, is it actually giving you the information that you're looking for? You have to have data integration and interoperability. Integration, we all understand. Interoperability, hopefully, most of us understand as well. When it comes to interoperability for nonprofit that works with external stakeholders, whether it's government or institutions outside the organization, you have to create, you have to have an approach that you're packaging your data in a way that is consumable by other people. So interoperability, the format, the structure, how you're going to do the interaction with the external systems. One, you have to establish that as a standard organization-wise, and making sure that every data that you have has complying to that standard. We know if we're going to be requiring a certain data about certain experiment that we're doing, a certain program that we're running um, in a country or locally here, uh, how I'm going to transfer it to the local organization that want to do further research based on our data. So we have to work, and again, the exercise starts with the goal. If my program requires doing research with an external organization, I need to understand what systems they're going to use, how they want to interact with my systems. If my organization doesn't have those standards or capabilities, should we build those in order for us to work with that organization? Now, those are strategic questions that you ask. Once you have the data, you you have the data um, management, cleansing, integrity tools. My data is connected. You do want to make sure that data is secure. Um, Data security. Uh, we always talk about it. You hear so much about it, and despite of all the precaution that we do, we hear about uh, larger companies getting hacked. It's the hardest job uh, for us CIO who's responsible for the information that we have within the organization, or we have now data owners at the C level. So you have to have robust data security measures. Now that starts from how I'm going to collect it, who's going to have access to it, when do you update it. You're going to have data encryption in place. You're going to have user access control. You're going to have regular update of security protocols. Now, those protocols could be both processes and systems that you're using. You can ensure compliance with data protection regulations such as GDPR or CCPA. You can educate staff members about data privacy best practices and the importance of data security. Now, importance of data security, training our employees for data privacy practices is not a one-time activity. It has to be a program. It has to be something that everybody certifies every year. So it's there on top of their mind. It's something that they're always thinking about. Everybody, as you travel in an airline, every time we fly, they give us instructions on what happens if you have an emergency. Same thing about data training. It's an ongoing thing. Every time you start a new system, we should educate internal stakeholders. This new type of system is being rolled out. This is the type of data we're going to start collecting or managing, and this is the protocols around this data. And of course, you're going to have a wider ongoing training to make sure people are kept up to date on the latest security threat policies that the organizations have. And this would be the set of steps that you take, and none of that you can define once and say like, I'm done with it. This is an ongoing task. You have data duplication tools. Every few years, if not every year, you have improvements on those tools. So you want to keep checking your stack. You may have needs to review your data collection strategy. So this is kind of, you keep iterating and refining over a period of time. So you have to keep looking at the data. Now, the only way you're going to do that is when you have the stewardship at the top level and data as a asset is constantly being discussed and reviewed, the policies, tools, and so forth at the management level. Now, once you got the strategy in place, now we wanted to talk about three distinct things, what you do with collection, storage, and so forth. So let's start with the three aspects of, uh, how do you manage good data? What are the best practices around it? Um, First thing is data collection. So I did mention data collection briefly in my earlier slide. Data collection best practices starts with defining clear data collection guidelines. Sounds pretty simple. It is simple if you define it upfront and train people. What it means is define the purpose and objective of data collection, determine the specific data points that align with the organization's goal and desired outcomes. So collect only the information that you need. Sometimes I've worked with teams. Uh, for them, if you're going to need 10 pieces of data, they're like, we got access to this person. Why don't we ask them 5 other questions? Now, it sounds a great idea. It's like having something in your garage that you would never use, right? It takes away the space, requires you to maintain it, but it's not useful for the goals that you have. So you have to make sure that whatever you're going to use, uh, you know, this is what you need, or you're going to collect. Sorry. Standardize your collection methods. So instead of having different people collecting different ways, some are using Excel, some have uh, their own proprietary way of doing it, standardize it. Now, standardization doesn't mean restrict the viable options that you have. If collecting data from Facebook form is important for you, standardize it and say, I'm going to have Facebook form. I'm also going to have my web form where people are going to come and put the data. But those are still, I know the format I'm going to get, which is consistent across both the channels that I'm going to use. I know that I'm going to use these two channels. It's not ad hoc. So standardize information. Uh, Focus on relevant data that you have. Um, Essentially, and that was the point, earlier point. Um, there are tons of data, a lot of data. When somebody talks about make sense, we got to stay focused on it. Collect data that is relevant for your mission, programs, and stakeholder needs. Avoid collecting information that you don't need. Uh, you may have a different program that you want to fund down the line if you need additional information. It has a cost. But if you look at it, cost of sponsoring another project down the line versus cost of maintaining data for another 2 years if you're not going to need it, it may balance out. Provide training to the staff. Uh, Staff keeps changing. New people join, people move into the new role. What worked for somebody in a role prior to their current role may not work because they have additional responsibilities now. So making sure that every staff member that's dealing with data gets proper training, and we have a training plan in place. And going back to my earlier point, have some sort of certification method. It doesn't have to be certification like we have formal external questionnaire sort of thing, but it's more validation of that someone has gone through a training, which is once a year or once every 6 months is a mandatory training for their role. Use technology. Um, Leverage technology tools to streamline data collection process. Now, don't let people, I mean, obviously it's very um, easy to go to a seminar or go to an event and hand it out uh, paper forms for them to fill. If you can avoid those paper forms and have a tablet, that saves a lot of data integrity issues down the line. That also makes sure that all the data that you're collecting, none of that gets lost because digitally captured. So that would be an example of that. Leverage technology. Use surveys, mobile data collection apps, digital forms to capture data effectively and reduce manual data entry. A lot of the challenges that you see in your data start with collection. They get worse down the line because you have you're collecting the same data and putting into scatter system, that is another problem too, but it all starts from collections. If I control my collection upfront, I can have a better quality data down the line. The second would be storage. Um, Common sense says centralized data storage. I understand the cost of centralizing data storage sometimes is higher, and some smaller organizations can't afford it. So then the alternative would be define roles of each system in terms of data storage. Where will I store CRM data? Where will I store financial data? Now, if you connect them together, uh, you would be able to get the right system providing the right information to you. The best thing to do is centralizing data storage. Centralizing means you may have if you're using Salesforce for your CRM and you have other systems where you're doing other stuff, they may all dump information to a global data warehouse or the data mart that you may have. You want to ensure that you have implemented the data security policies. So data security, uh, invited an expert is worth the the expense that you're going to have on the project. If you don't have in-house expert, then invite somebody. But if you have in-house expert, then make sure that you have defined robust data security measures, implemented those, uh, make sure that you have encryption, access control, data backup, um, all of these things, especially when you look at from the Salesforce point of view, Salesforce ecosystem is filled with tools that makes it very easy. You can take your data backup very easily. You can push your data to centralized data storage very easily. You can have access control very easily. And these used to be challenges down, I remember working early in my career, making changes to permissions would be a project. Making an integration between two system would be like 6 months project when used to work with banks and credit card companies. It literally would be 6 to 8 month project to have one piece of data shared across two different systems. Things have changed, especially when it comes to SaaS products, especially when it comes to Salesforce. These are non-factors in terms of the cost and time. The only thing that requires is thinking. Have you thought it through upfront? Do you have the right people to do it for you? Um, and then lastly, on storage, organize data with a logical structure. Develop a logical data structure and naming convention for your data. Create categories, folders, labels that reflect your organizational program, projects, or other relevant classification. Now, when we're thinking about data, we are thinking about databases. We are thinking about Salesforce or ERP system or uh, any other homegrown system that you have. But a lot of the data is still in your files. A lot of the data is still in Word format, a PDF that you're storing because you're making a grant. You got a workflow around that. The best way to do that is you start with the logical data modeling. For every department, every function, they got to be a logical data model. That helps us understand what the data would be. And then from logical data model, you get into if this data is what I'm going to keep, where would it stay? Come up with the naming convention. And so when people are searching, organizing data, finding data, it's very easy for them. You would extend the same concept to your development team. So when we are building new system, we are creating data dictionary, we are using that naming convention that makes sense. When I'm looking at a field, intuitively or by just looking at it, I should know the purpose of the field, or the purpose of this data, and I should be able to search and see if this type of data exists somewhere else. So I can actually think about how I'm going to combine the data sources. The next would be uh, organization, which is where I started in my last slide. Starts with data entry. I've spoken quite a bit on that. Again, I can't emphasize enough on that. You have to have those standards. Automate data cleansing and validation. Use a tool. There are free tools on Salesforce. Uh, there are a lot of companies like us. They provide discounted pricing for their services and tools. So leverage that. It's not that expensive to have a tool that works in your environment, helps you clean the data. Data validation is something that you built in, right? So if you forgot to build in, you can sponsor a project where you actually enforce data validation, so you're not collecting garbage data. Make sure that you have defined data. If you have defined the logical structure of the data, you're going to define data definitions. Good good old school data dictionary type of artifact. Implement data governance and review and update all of this regularly. So this, again, is not something that you want to define once and forget it. You got to have this on an ongoing basis. You have to continue doing um, uh, review of your standards that you have for data entry, governance model that worked, new people have joined, new roles have created. How would they fit into your data governance workflow? All of that you got to define. Now, moving on to ensuring data integrity and accuracy. Now, these are no different than how would you do it, so quality assurance. I come from system development background. I've also managed applications where we were capturing customer data and I was responsible for managing that data. Now, essentially, how do you make sure the quality of your data, not only in production environment, which everybody cares about, of course, but also in your test environments? I've worked with organizations where you design uh, a marketing journey, for example, and you want to try it out before it goes live. You have certain data that you need to do the marketing journey. You have to have data in certain statuses. And I've seen organizations, large organizations, where a marketing journey starts. We thought it's going to be clean data or test data uh, with mock emails. And that includes emails, the live emails that the client gets. Now that would be the worst case scenario when you're dealing with the client communication or stakeholder communication. So when you're thinking about data quality issues, not just production, but also your sandboxes. And we're talking about data governance, data policies, data entry, not just production, but also how you're going to maintain your dev sandboxes, your UAT sandboxes, uh, QA sandboxes. So you start um, quality assurance, data validations, and field level controls. It's extremely easy in Salesforce to have data validation put in place. You you don't need to do a lot. All we need to know is what is it that you want to validate. Now that's the thinking part. Uh, a lot of the time, the projects or the data qualities don't meet the standard that you want. It's not because of technical limitations. It's because ability to think. And now the ability to think starts from the goals that we had. Uh, And from the goals, you do the data modeling. And then when you do the data model, you understand what my limitations for the data model is going to be. And that's where the thinking starts. So you have to have the right people involved in thinking about the goals, designing a data structure. When it comes down to engineering team, uh, we should be clear. If I'm going to be capturing um, certain type of data, what validation rule that needs to be put in? If I'm capturing certain fields, if I'm capturing certain information, let's say credit card for somebody, what field level control will I put? I'm going to have access to a stakeholder record directly or donor record directly to a certain profile, but certain folks on that profile don't need to have, should not have access to my credit card. We should not store credit card on premise or even in our system, because if I'm using a PCI compliant tool for credit card, I should put a field level control that I don't save it. I just pass it on to whatever system that needs to consume that data. Um, Conduct regular data quality audits. This and this again, a nonprofit. The whole discussion today is about nonprofit, but everybody has a desire to do good data, but they don't have the will, or they don't put the resources to do uh, uh, what's required to get the good data. One of the low cost method is audit. Now, data quality audits could be automated. You can have certain type of reports that you create. You could have certain AI tools that you can use for data auditing. You can build your own AI setup using Einstein, um, essentially, or you can have just people job require auditing data in a certain frequency, which is I look at the data, I pull my report, and again, uh, working with Salesforce makes it extremely easy because all you got to do is somebody like, let's say, if I'm responsible for data as a data analyst, I should be pulling periodically my data to make sure if certain fields are required in certain format, if certain validation rules are enforced on certain fields, they are indeed taken care of. You can make it really intelligent, and you can pinpoint the records that do not comply with the data. So, and then output of that audit report goes as an input to fix whether it's the process issue, training issue, or the system issues, right? So that kind of creates a to-do list for the team that's basically is collecting or managing the data. Um, to get data, good quality data, you have to have data entry and update protocols. I have seen organizations where absolutely there's no update protocols. Uh, People working on live production data and for for validating certain requirements. And as part of that, sometimes they update the record. And they think they're going to go back and update it back, but they forget. And then essentially what ends up happening is you got data that was updated by somebody for testing purposes and never got fixed again. Uh, Having those protocols very easy to say, or having permission sets that are very easy to implement, like when you're going to be dealing with production system data, you're not going to be updating it unless these are the following scenarios in which you update it. When you're entering data, um, you define your protocol, like who's supposed to enter, uh, how much data they're supposed to enter. So things like something that you can very easily fix. It doesn't require anything cost-wise. On the update protocol, I would make a comment that the example I was giving is it does require investment. If you're going to be updating data because you're testing something, the right way to doing that is fixing your test environment. Um, Last bullet point here is regular data backup and security data, secure data check, right? So you regularly back up your data. You make sure data is securely stored. You have the right tools to monitor it. There are excellent tools in the market that lets you data monitoring. So making sure that every uh, right way of doing that is maybe every week you have, if you're working with Salesforce, you can run jobs. If data is too large, maybe every month you can do a backup, but you have to have at least the incremental backup you can do every couple of weeks. So you don't have to do the entire backup. Anything that got changed, you can define your data backup policies like that. The next topic would be leveraging analytics to uncover insights, because um, data is addictive, right? So, and once somebody gets used to making decisions based on the data, they want more. And if the right person starts using the data in the organization, executives, they don't mind funding to fix the issues with the data. So my job as a consultant, and anybody's job who's working as a data analyst or systems engineer, our job is to make sure we are thinking about analytics. We are helping them get the insights that they're looking for. And sometimes it helps to give insight. Obviously, you want to give them the right report. If the data is incorrect, you footnote it and talk about it and say, like, this is, I wish I had time or resources to fix it, but here's the dashboard or report that you wanted. Uh, and that kind of triggers the discussion on data qualities and how do we fix it and so forth. Um, Salesforce does an excellent job for reports and dashboards. So leverage those. You can use Tableau if you have advanced level reporting needs, or if you have multiple different data sources. We have seen our clients use BI. That's an excellent tool as well. Um, for most cases, out of the box, Salesforce dashboarding and reporting capabilities work. When you're working with different systems. I earlier talked about centralized data storage. If you're not able to centralize, connect data. When you're building reports, not only within your system, you're going to pull report from different objects to catch your report, but also pull report from different systems to get the insight that you're looking for. Storing of all this data has purpose. We talked about you got to have analytics. You have to impact the experience of your stakeholders. You have to impact the experience of your donors, fundraisers. So make sure the data, when you're looking at it, you're not restricted to looking at it in silo, whether it's one object or one system. Look at it holistically. And lastly, predictive analytics. Now, predictive analytics with Einstein, super easy to do it. You could actually build quite complex models if you wanted to get a little bit deeper into how you're going to leverage Einstein through their direct APIs, right? So Einstein, if you don't have the skills and resources internally, it lets you do basic stuff through admin steps, but you could hire a consulting company like us to help us help you with analytics that requires a little bit deeper and use of AI. You can stay within Salesforce ecosystem, or you can actually open yourself with now new tools with generative AI. You can use definitely Google AI, Microsoft AI, depending on the need and the resources that you have. Um, think about using predictive. Now, that kind of takes me to the next logical slide is practical data management tools and technologies. We work with ServiceNow, um, NetSuite, um, Salesforce. When we think about systems, a great system for nonprofit, Salesforce is what comes to mind. CRM, Salesforce. Uh, Data integration platform, you got to figure out they're really good integration platforms. I wouldn't recommend doing point-to-point integration unless you're a very small organization, but using affordable tools like Zapier. You can use, obviously, if you have enterprise class infrastructure, then definitely look into MuleSoft, Boomi, Informatica, and other similar tools. Look at data cleansing tools. You got Validity, Data Ladder, WinPure, and there are tons and tons of other very good tools. Some of them are free, including a tool offered by us. It's called Duplicate Search and Merge. So maybe all you need is a free tool that helps you find duplicates and merge data. In that case, you go with a free tool. Uh, you have to have data presentation tools. You got Tableau, Power BI, Google Data Studio. You have other presentation layer. So depending upon the budget, it makes sense to either have a resource within your organization or have somebody like us to help you selecting the tool. If you're going to centralize your data, figure out where you're going to store it. Don't store it on premise. It's hard to maintain. It's hard to keep it secure. Use what other organizations are using now: Amazon, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure. And for data governance and compliance, use tools that are helping you with the data governance. So there are tools that are designed to point out data integrity issues, not only in the static data, as you entering information, you would get those flags and alerts to leverage technology. And the last slide, guys, and I'm sorry I'm running a little behind. We started 5 minutes late. I'll try to rush this one real quick and see if we have time for a couple of questions. Um, Real world examples. Um, the tons of examples you can find on Salesforce. If you go to Salesforce nonprofit website, you will have good case studies from our examples when I'm looking at recent examples of the work we have done. Um, One that comes to mind is a pretty large nonprofit organization that deals with arts. Uh, Managing their ongoing Salesforce ecosystem is something we've done, and we cleaned up their infrastructure, built integration, um, connected the payment processing vendor or new system, making sure when we storing data, the credit card or the financial data for a client, if instead of us worrying about the PCI compliance, we collect it, don't store it, push it back to the vendor or the tool side. Now, that's one example of the work that we've recently done. We've also done quite a bit of cleanup of data in last think we've been working with them for a couple of years now. So that's one. Another one, a pretty large social cause-driven nonprofit organization, working with them to customize their CRM, which is based out of US policies, US processes. And as you internationalize it, instead of trying to create a new system that's going to come with its own database and its own code maintenance, extending the functionality of the US workflows and US capabilities to international users, which are going to be working whether it's Canadian requirements. In this specific use case was Canada, but then you got Southeast Asia using the same system. Behind the scene is the same database. So if you have an overlap of audience, you don't have multiple different systems to worry about. So we've been working with them for another, I would say, close to 2 years now. So those two examples that come to mind. With that, I'm going to open to questions for you guys. So do you have any questions that came, Sarah?
Yeah, Rajiv, I think that one that just came in, and certainly everyone, please post your questions in the Q&A. You're welcome to do so, and we'll, even if we go over a little bit for anyone that can stay, would love to have Rajiv answer as many as we can. It's one that came in is, you've partnered with a lot of nonprofit organizations in your career. What differentiates successful ones?
Great question. Um, and I would say this would be nonprofit and for-profit organization. What makes one company more successful with their data management solutions than others? Uh, Number one, I would say, is attention to data. Now, by that I mean not just data. It's like, data as an asset. Executive level ownership of data. The roles are defined at that level. Goal-driven approach for data that we talked about. And when I say goal-driven, they organizations, believe it or not, I've worked with certain organizations as a company. We have worked with them. Uh, when you start a new system concept, data discussion comes in. Data becomes a side project along with the main project. So that's number one. Number two would be skills and capacity. You have to have the right skills. If you don't have, granted that not every organization can hire the top-notch data analyst or data architect, but you could hire a consultant for a short duration who can help you organize the data. You do need capacity if you're going to do audit. Make sure that you have kept some capacity for audit. Um, Technology and right data culture. Technology, they have the right tools for automation. They're not doing manual entry as much as others. That really makes a huge difference. Culture, it's a mindset. So data is a mindset. It's kind of, you got to have the right culture. Why do we need to collect? How much is enough? Don't get greedy with data because that comes with the cost. Cost is storage, cost is the risk, right? So good companies, attention to data, capacity and skills that's required, right tools and technology and mindset.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate that answer. We had one more come in. What are the best practices within the Salesforce ecosystem specifically that you have seen people?
Yeah, I'm gonna think and come with some top ones that come to my mind. If you're a nonprofit, I would say start your journey, obviously, and most of them do, almost all of them do. Uh, you have nonprofit service pack, right? So use nonprofit service pack not just for the capabilities, but also for the data model. It comes with a very good structure. Salesforce has created that data model based on what they have seen in the industry across the board. So that's number one. Don't try to come up with your own objects. Try to figure out what are the other objects Salesforce already has, fields Salesforce has that's offering. I'm not saying don't do at all, but make sure that you know why you're adding a new thing. Um, Ongoing data cleanup would be another best practice. So you would have Salesforce has a really sophisticated out of the box, duplicate catching feature, but you can have a tool that helps you augment that capabilities. So data cleanup, smart data validation would come to my mind, integrated ecosystem, Uh, and then I've seen, I'm hesitant to use the term master data management, but I've seen organizations, when you're looking at Salesforce ecosystem, you could, without going into a centralized data source, you could build integration with Salesforce. You could have transactional data, certain type of data stays in Salesforce, but is provided for reporting or transactional purposes to other systems. So have an integrated environment where access to data is available. And lastly, use Salesforce Shield and GDPR compliance. Uh, that's going to keep us in compliant with all the policies because we don't have to worry about those. If you custom build those things in-house, it's hard to maintain them. Use Shield, use GDPR compliance features. That's going to keep you safe. So that's all I can.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Rajiv. Greatly appreciate that and your insightful answers. With that, we will wrap today's session up and really hope that today's discussions have provided you with new perspectives and practical knowledge and inspiration to further explore your data management and how you can unlock your data's full potential. So thank you again, Rajiv, and everyone who joined us today. We hope to see you in future webinars and events and encourage you to connect with us on our social media and in our newsletter. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.